Hi, welcome to the Better Ways podcast with me, Tom.
And I'm Jamie.
Hi, Jamie, how's it going?
Very good, thank you. Returned to the UK after 20 days of being in Spain. And as is, the norm, it's
Mm.
raining.
Yeah, afraid so.
Yep, nothing changes in our little isle, does it?
No.
It remains exactly the same. How are you?
I'm good. I should say I think we're having some technical problems on this podcast, so it might be a bit of a low frame rate, but we'll muddle through anyway.
Yeah, exactly. I'm sure
But
Abigail will forgive us. Yeah.
yes. So what's caught your eye this week?
Well, I think there's a running theme throughout a lot of the stuff that you and I talk about, Tom. It's either
Mm.
new developments like ChatGPT, or more often than not, it's where we think the world's gone absolutely insane and
Yeah.
doesn't really show any inclination to go back to a sane world, really.
Hmm.
So there are two things that we could talk about, and to be fair, there's a lot of crossover between the two.
Yeah.
Is the this sudden fact that drag queens and drag queen story hour is now the center of the culture wars, and the new Harry Potter video game, which is also the center of the culture wars. It's utterly bizarre. Do you know about both of these things?
Only a little bit. So I knew that there had been some controversy over a new Harry Potter video game
Hmm.
related to association with J.K. Rowling, I presume. But tell me
Hmm.
about it.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. So I think was it called Hogwarts Legacy or Legacy of Hogwarts
Hmm.
or something? I don't know. I haven't played it. So yeah, so this has been this has been years in the
Yeah.
making, and obviously it got closer even when it was under development. But as it was getting closer to release dates, the certain sections of the trans community and their allies decided that obviously any association with J.K. Rowling is punishable by being burnt at the stake, and
Right.
did everything they could to cause a boycott.
Right.
And as inevitably happens, the Barbara Streisand effect. The more you tell people not to look at something or they can't have something,
The more they
they
want it.
run for it.
Yeah.
So I think it sold 12 million copies in its first
Wow.
like 6 weeks or
Mm.
2 months or something like that.
Hmm.
So I'm sure it was that. So it's one of the fastest selling video games of
Mm.
all time. It's made a ton of money for
Mm.
the developers, as you can imagine, and I think it's
Yeah.
probably made a bit of. I don't know if she still makes money from it. I don't think she does. I think like she had some fee beforehand or something. I don't know exactly. But
Hmm.
what's insane about this story though is that when the game came out and a load of streamers, so
Yeah.
YouTube and Twitch streamers who basically stream themselves playing video games, showed themselves playing Hogwarts Legacy, and of course their live stream got
Right.
absolutely pummeled with very aggressive, very vitriolic, in
Mm.
some cases, what I understand, quite threatening
Hmm.
activists, including doxing the streamers
Right.
as well, causing boycotts and like some really, really, really nasty stuff.
Yeah.
And I think that section of activists that did that were under the impression that the general public would be on their side,
Right.
and that's obviously not been the case, I think.
Hmm.
And I think they've probably been a little bit surprised about the pushback they've got. And obviously they're spinning it as, right wing, far right monsters are pushing back against them. And to be fair, from what I was reading a few days ago, 4chan, the kind of like incel, as far as I'm aware, it's an
Mm.
incel website, got involved and has doxed the doxers. So
Oh,
it's
right.
become this ridiculous spiral of just doxing
Yeah.
and vitriol and just
So it's
just
spun out of
craziness.
control.
Yeah,
Mm.
whereas like nuanced takes on this
Mm.
are buried under the avalanche of extreme opinions,
Mm.
and it's crazy, really. And yeah, it's mad. But do you know what I was thinking about this whilst I was away? Someone made this point. I
Hmm.
can't remember who it was. They said it feels like woke has peaked now.
Right.
Okay, and they were talking about it in another context, but I think it
Mm.
applies with this a little bit, where the fear of people getting on the wrong side of certain things because they'd be
Hmm.
harassed and doxxed and fired and censored and shot down.
Yeah.
I think that's starting to fade a little bit now because public support seems to shift the other way. They're a bit like,
Hmm.
we've listened to the extremes for the
Yeah.
best part of 4, 5, 6 years now of just
Mm-hmm.
crazy, in different, not talking in one context, in multiple contexts.
Mm-hmm.
And now people are just going, you know what? Just shut up. It's like and the best response that I've seen is, this is a freaking video game. If
Yeah.
people want to play it, they can play it. You have no right to tell them not. And you're completely misquoting what Rowling said anyway. So why would we base our purchasing decisions on your misrepresentation of what she said?
Well, I
Yeah,
think that's the core of this, isn't it? So I don't think she's ever said an anti-trans thing in her life. I certainly can't see any evidence of it. What she has done is stand up for women's rights and women-only spaces, and making sure that they are preserved and protected because it's one of her causes she cares about. So it's kind of like there's nothing at the core of this except a misreading of what she's saying or a mislabeling of what she was saying, and then building on that and building on that and building on that until you get to the ridiculous distance that a video game out of which she makes some money then has streamers attacked, and then the streamers are attacked by others, and there's a big pile on. So it's kind of but more part of me thinks, does it really exist in the sense that, I mean, I know that it's real and people have been doxxed and that, but actually isn't most people's experience. It's a tiny number of people on both sides that are actually involved.
correct.
So maybe part of this is not over publicising these small cases. And as you say, the mainstream reaction is, what's all this about? You don't decide this for me.
Yeah.
So that's the Harry Potter thing. What was the other one that you wanted to?
The other one. Oh
The
God,
first one.
yeah. So this started from what I could see a few months back, but it was getting one of those fringe topics on social media, and I was a bit like, this is weird. And obviously, I'm
Is this
not going to comment on
it's a
it.
drag queen story?
Yeah. So it's
Okay.
drag
I'm familiar
queen
with
story.
that. Yes,
Yeah,
that's the concept that drag queens go into schools and they read stories to young children.
correct. And obviously, what's happened here again is it's become lightning rod issues for. A lightning rod issue for the culture war, where it seems like there's now blanket approval or blanket disapproval, depending on
Right.
which
Nothing
side
in
of the
between.
political spectrum you
Yeah.
would place yourself on. And this is really bizarre to me because, and again, so I wanted to look into this in a bit more detail before coming to like a not a decision, but before kind of having a firm opinion on it, because I just don't know. And so one of the sensible questions was asked was why do people think drag is sexualized? Normally, it's not sexualized, and I think that's a very fair point. The counterpoint to that, though, and I've seen pictures that somebody's posted online of some of these events where you literally have someone dressed in a very sexualized way in front of and performing in front of kids, and I'm a bit like, that's surely not right, is it? Am I out of touch there? So you shouldn't have a blanket defense of this if there is inappropriate presentation going on, but you shouldn't have a blanket condemnation of this if there is nothing inappropriate about what is going on. But the nuance again is getting lost here quite a bit, and I think we're in very real danger now where issues aren't taking on facts, they're not taking on evidence, they're now taking on which side you sit on. I think this has been going on for a while, but it seems we've peaked with that level of utter insanity now.
But then again, there aren't many drag queens doing a story hour. I don't think there are. It's a popular thing.
No, but it's the snowball effect, isn't it? People are worried about.
A few cases, or a handful of cases, or sometimes even one case that then everyone gets all worked up about. So I can see points on both sides with that one, but again, I'm wondering if we're, like you say, I think this might be a sign of all this coming to an end, which is the fact that we're getting into these absurd corner cases, which are actually tiny, and it aren't the way that most people are living or experiencing their lives. And so eventually it becomes so absurdist that people disengage and move on. So that might be happening here. I mean, clearly you don't want young children exposed to overtly sexualised behaviour, whoever it comes from. So, but like you say, that would depend on, I mean, I can imagine going to watch a drag queen story hour and thinking this is a lovely thing for the kids. And I can imagine being appalled. And it would all depend on what it was like, what the behaviour was like, what I thought the reasons were for that behaviour, what was being
Yeah.
said, what was being experienced, why it was being done.
Yeah.
And so you can't make a blanket statement about that. And yeah, so I guess I'm feeling less bothered about these things these days because it feels more absurdist, and it feels like
Yeah.
we're moving on, or we're starting the
Yeah.
process of moving on, and therefore I'm less worried that this is going to
Yeah.
grow or
I
continue. I think
the only
it's a sign of death
mm,
throes, not a sign of popularity.
I hope you're right about that. I think the concern is that we're importing this American lunacy, right? Where
Well,
everything's becoming
are we? I
this,
mean, how many drag queen story hours are there in the
no, you're right.
UK?
You're right.
Were
It's
any of the
what I mean is,
gamers UK based? I don't know. And also,
yeah, mm,
the case of that Canadian teacher who's been the one with the false prosthetic
oh yeah,
chest. I mean, that's one case, and I think now
who's waiting for a
they've
payday.
I think now they've
Yeah,
got rid of they've said he's got to go. He's got to leave the school.
he's trolling.
Yeah.
He's absolutely
Well,
trolling his school.
I
He
don't
wants to
think
get fired. Yeah,
he's said, so we don't think we know. But again, it's like it's once.
yeah,
I don't think that's growing. I don't think most teachers want to do that. I don't think most teachers
no,
would be comfortable doing that. It's easy to get outraged by it. It makes for a good, YouTube or TV segment.
mm. I,
But
the
actually,
only,
is it a
mm,
sign? Isn't it again a sign of people of pushing the limits in an absurdist way to help bring us all back to a sane policy? And I think the school have enforced some kind of uniform dress policy for staff, which
mm,
is what we used to have. I mean, certainly in the UK, that was usually the case anyway. I don't know about Canada,
mm.
but so a sane solution has arisen, which says you can't dress like that and come to work.
I think you're maybe underestimating the insanity of the United States the last few
Well,
years.
so again,
Yeah,
I'm not underestimating the amount of hot air that's generated. That there are a small group of people who get very angry and stuff goes back and forth, and people
mm,
attack on the other side, and that does affect real people's lives.
mm.
But I'm not seeing evidence that's widespread, is what I'm saying. I mean,
I think there is more than you
if
maybe
we
think. Mm,
of this kind of extreme stuff. I mean,
mm.
if we'd seen drag queen story hours everywhere, if we'd seen loads of teachers
Oh right,
dressing
yeah,
like
no,
that, if
not
we'd
about
seen,
that. Yeah. Mm,
uh, yeah, I mean, in general terms, the people playing around with language and what you're allowed to say, and all the people, institutions tying themselves to the knots with
yeah,
unisex toilets or bathrooms, and there's a lot of that going on.
yeah, there's
Um,
loads of that.
And again, there was a story about a school that's taken the doors off the toilets. This wasn't directly related to the trans issue, but
Mm,
they'd had problems, bad behaviour in toilets, bullying.
right,
This is a British school, I think, and they'd taken the doors off the toilets to the boys and the girls, and the kids had gone on strike over it because
right.
they felt that they were not getting any privacy because
Mm,
although you could
I
go
like
into a
this guy.
cubicle, but
Yeah,
for the boys you could see what the boys were doing from outside. So um, again, I think it's a sort of related issue that came up. But there's one
mm,
example. It's happened one school. All of a
yeah,
sudden,
yeah, yeah,
everyone's going on about
yeah,
are we going to have cameras in the toilets next? What will happen? And it's like, well, that
yeah,
hasn't happened. This is a school maybe making a bad choice in how to deal with a behavioural problem.
yeah.
But we get awfully het up by these single examples.
We
They're not
do.
all harbingers of doomsday, I
No,
think.
no, I agree. I totally agree with you, and I think maybe that's where I will sometimes go wrong because, but then, but then the funny thing is, 7 years ago when I
Mm.
spotted the insanity and the thinking that was going on, mainly on the other side of the Atlantic, but coming into the UK as well,
Mm.
and I saw some of the bad consequences that could come along from let's call it extreme wokeism,
Mm.
call it what you will, um, and of course the pushback against
Yes.
that, and I could see it, and because I said if this goes on this long, somebody's going to step in and push back, and that's where it can get
Mm.
very nasty and quite violent, and that's what's happened. And the pushback that I got back then when I would raise these concerns was
Mm.
again it's small things that you're making too big a deal out of it. And I was like, just you watch, because it's the purity angle that I think we're seeing now. People look at these like these small things and go, well, those we should universally accept that, and then they get defended, and then they snowball, and then the opposition side go, well, I can't allow that because that leads to the what's it called, the snowball effect, isn't it? You know, and it keeps growing and growing, so you get pushed back that. And I think one of the things where what I'm more convinced of now than ever is that if there is a chance for poor thinking to take root and spread like a virus, it will take root and spread like a virus. Where facts don't matter, evidence doesn't matter, nuance doesn't matter, and I think that's what we're seeing. So, and I posted something on social media the other day, and the majority of people were like, "Okay, that is absolutely insane what that person has said there." A few people pushed back against me, and I was quite surprised. And some of them kind of went quite hard with it. And someone said to me, "Well, Jamie, how liberal are you for posting this?" And I went, I don't think you understand what liberalism is. I said, this moron can say whatever they want. I'm not asking for them to be cancelled. I'm not asking for them to be censored. What I'm doing is pointing out the insanity of their thinking and saying that it deserves ridicule because it does. That's what, and that's something I think that what I class as my side, the people who are more on the progressive left have forgotten. And they have this idea in their heads now that anything that comes with that badge of being progressive or inclusive or tolerant should be automatically accepted. Where we know that is an insane way of organizing your life, running a country, running a business, or running a school. Yeah, it is crazy. It leads to terrible decision making in the name of something good. And as you and I, we speak about all the time, the law, of unintended consequences or the greatest harm coming from the best intentions. I almost kind of, and I want to be wrong about these things, and it sounds arrogant, but I've been right about so many of them because for me it's just the inevitable the inevitable result of what's going to happen. I can almost spot it ahead and thinking, right, if someone doesn't start calling this out early, it will snowball and become more of a problem, and then the pushback has a chance of becoming more aggressive, more violent, more vitriolic, and suddenly what was a small thing has blown up and actually become, which we should never be talking about, is actually having real life impacts on large numbers of people.
So I'm with you on the big stuff that is prevalent everywhere, just not the corner cases, which I think get a lot of the attention. But I do think times are changing, and more and more people are realising, and we've had the use of Section 35 to block the Scottish government's law recently. It's become something that politicians are talking about, and in the media quite a lot. And I think I never felt that people might have been going along with it in the sense of not speaking out or not feeling they could speak out, but I don't think privately most people ever agreed with a lot of the more crazy ideas.
And they're afraid.
And I think the fact that they're out there and they're being ridiculed now and parodied, and now you can do that on Twitter and not get banned, and you always have been able to on smaller platforms. I think that's healthy, because I think these ideas need to be ridiculed and taken to pieces and shown for what they are. So I guess that's why I'm feeling more optimistic. And of course, the longer that the ideas are tried, the more practical problems they run into, and the more that will change people's minds.
Correct.
I mean, there's huge problems in workplaces at the moment where people are trying to follow diversity policy, but there are no candidates. They can't find anybody to meet the job spec because there aren't the proportion of people applying. And then you've got this dilemma of, do you just lower the entry requirements in order to fill your diversity quota?
Oh God!
What do you do?
I know.
But because there aren't equal numbers of different sexes and races and backgrounds and sexualities and all the rest of it, that genders and all the rest of it that apply for different jobs in different industries. Not everyone's interested in the same thing. Not everybody, even if they could now be interested and barriers have been lifted, it takes generations for that. The proportions to change anyway. But there's no guarantee they're going to go to 50% of everything or equal representation, because interests don't tend to be aligned.
And there's too many variables.
So I think people are starting to realise, well, that's no good, because then And then the people who are being hired are starting to think, well, I don't want to be a diversity hire because then everyone will think that's why I'm here, not because I'm any good. So they're starting to push back on, no, I don't want you to make it easy for me to get the job. I want to be, I want to prove that I'm actually better than everybody else. So I see a lot of this, the wheels starting to come off, and people starting to realise that. And what tends to happen in that is eventually you work around it. So with organisations, eventually it becomes something you pay lip service to, but you work around it. And everybody knows, but you can't say it because
bit like the green agenda.
And then eventually you can say it. Well, that's a really good example. So much greenwashing that goes on in organisations, and in fact most of what we do at home, things like recycling and all that, most of
it goes to the same dump as
most of it goes to landfill. A lot of it's not sorted and not recycled, and the stuff that is recycled, a lot of it's not worth recycling from an energy point of view. But we do it because we can recycle those materials because we have a process that we can actually run. But there's no particular sense in recycling those things, and there are other things that we can't recycle, like a lot of plastics, which are the things we actually need to stop producing and recycling, if we could, don't have a cost-effective process. So so you end up with a theatre that people are going through, but it's actually not having a huge impact on the ground.
Life stabilises.
And that's what I'm thinking. And then eventually people drop the facade. In the long run, they drop the facade because it becomes safe to do so. So I guess that's where I'm at the moment. I've started to when I see these news stories, to say, how many examples? One, okay.
It's a good idea. It makes you less
how many people actually involved? Okay, 3. Right. Okay.
I
need all this stuff all this noise and light and fury and stuff gets written.
I need someone like you to pull me back from the brink sometimes, because sometimes I'm convinced we're in the world of insanity. But
the things that do concern me are, I think it's like happened in New Zealand, where they said that Maori knowing, they put in their school curriculum for everyone in New Zealand that Maori ways of knowing are on an equal footing to Western scientific ways of. Now, again, it doesn't concern me in that that's one small country at a tiny percentage of the population of the world, and it's already been ridiculed. But it concerns me that that's a blanket thing applied by governments, where people have no personal choice. So I think when governments are doing this, it's more concerning.
And the Canada example as well.
Yes.
With the church schools from Indigenous children. I don't know if you remember this last year. I'm sure it was last year, maybe 2021. They found what they thought were bodies underneath the school. They used like radar imaging, and they found them, and they said there was a massacre there.
Right.
And then they checked all the records. Other experts have got involved and said there is zero evidence of a massacre.
Right.
But because they think most, and don't get me wrong, I'm not defending the church schools because they sounded horrendous and they were evil. But even though they were horrendous and they were evil, doesn't mean this other thing is true as well. So truth still matters. And some people push back against it and gone, actually, look, you're because Justin Trudeau got involved and actually said, we apologise, this was hell, all the rest of it, and he apologised.
It turned out not to be true.
But he won't walk it back. There's a government minister who wants to make it illegal to question claims like that. You just have to accept them. And I agree with you. That is insanity, because you're asking people to deny physical reality. That is a dangerous road to go down. And if anyone on the progressive side supports that, they are not progressive in my view.
A lot of these things don't work through. So it's like reparations. So if you're going to talk reparations, well, most Americans should leave and give the Native Americans all their wealth and all their land.
But which native? Because
but why would you only go back to slavery in the 17th, 18th, and 19th century? Why wouldn't you go back further? I would like reparations from the French and the Romans.
From the Romans as well. Yeah.
Do
you want to hear something
for being conquered? And then we should all get reparations from Africa, because we all came from Africa and they colonised all of our. Every country in the world, as far as we know. So presumably the Africans should pay reparation. So when you do that, you can see the absurdity of these sorts of things.
You can. They fall down
and you start to see that, okay, well, no, justice can only be individual for people who've actually suffered that directly.
I agree. Yeah.
And then you can have reparations for that. So if it's within their lifetimes or their immediate parents were directly affected and it affected their life directly, but you can't keep going back, and we don't have the records to keep going back. We wouldn't.
No.
I mean, how would we pay reparations to the Neanderthals? Because we wiped them all out.
Yeah.
So, yeah. So, but yeah, Canada is another example. But maybe you need these countries to do these things for everyone else to realise that it's a crazy idea. You just hope it's not your country that does it.
Yeah. Yeah.
I guess.
I agree. Do you know, we had an interesting one here, didn't we? And to be honest, I was relatively pleasantly surprised at the universal condemnation, and it did surprise me. Was the Wakefield school incident? Did you read about that?
Which one was that?
The damage. So that these idiots.
Just the Quran.
Yeah, I shouldn't say he was an idiot boy because there was a group involved and it got out of hand, and it was a dare that got out of hand.
Okay, yeah.
He took a Quran into school and it got slightly scuffed. And yeah, it was a stupid thing for them to do. Of course it was. But when you see the video of the response to it, where you had the school head, a police chief inspector, I think it was the imam of the local community, plus the local councillor who was also Muslim, and you're looking at it, and it looked like a struggle session. It genuinely did. And you had the imam, I think it was the imam, it might not have been, but it definitely, a representative of the faith, who sat there and he went, "This is the Quran." He goes, "It doesn't matter if it's in the UK or it's outside of the UK, we will not tolerate desecration of this." And they praised, one of the councillors praised the mother for not pressing charges against the people that have been sending death threats to her son. And I was watching this and I was going, this calm stand, and I got in a bit of a Twitter spat with actually relatively famous lady who's on some various morning talk shows. She's obviously she's a Muslim as well, and I pushed back as a lot of the stuff that she was saying because we don't have blasphemy laws in the UK. But my concern is that for so long, we have there's a very delicate line, isn't it? You want to be tolerant and respectful, but we all know tolerance and respect for religion can go too far. And so my concern was, look, we spent centuries trying to get out from under the yoke of one religion. We certainly can't go back under the yoke of another. But again, there's been this weird marriage between liberalism and certain religions. And I'm just like, this makes no sense whatsoever. But the universal pushback, including from some quite left-leaning media, was this was insane and should not have been allowed. And so I was like, for me, in my head, I was like, okay, again, maybe it's kind of what we're talking to about earlier, Tom. Maybe the broad general consensus now is reality matters. Reality matters more than feelings. Can we get back to that stance?
Maybe, yeah. I mean, I think it's interesting. I mean, I imagined if the same people who are saying that probably wouldn't say that we should abolish abortion because the Catholic Church doesn't agree with it. And that's a widespread religion. And I think what we've ended up with is we've managed to make a comfortable accommodation with Christianity.
Yeah.
Because basically it is very relaxed in its modern form.
Yeah.
With how it's treated, how it's perceived, whether people participate or not. And all the hellfire and brimstone stuff is a distant past. But we've got a slightly less comfortable relationship with the Catholic Church because of what's happened with the history of the abuses, but also things like abortion and women's rights. So even in the Church of England, we still haven't got agreement on full agreement on women's rights. But it sort of mostly works, and abortion is settled, and nobody brings it up, and they don't question it. We haven't got that with Islam. And Islam is much more in the older model of how Christianity used to be, how the Catholic Church used to be, where burn the heretics and all of that. And we're pretending that it just happens, that you just accommodate these religions and everything just happens and things will work themselves out. And in fact, they don't. So I think what's missing... and that would apply to lots of other religions. I think it's not specific to Islam. It's any other religion which has strong prescriptive
Yeah.
responses to how it's perceived. Um, and so I think what's missing is a national conversation about how do we accommodate whichever religion it is.
Yeah, I
In this
agree.
case, Islam. Um, is it okay? Because I think you have to. I don't think it's simple. I don't think you can say, because if you're saying that you want to allow people to practice their own religion and be tolerant of the fact that people have their own faith, and then you have to then look at the specifics and say, well, what does tolerate mean?
Yeah.
How far can you take it, and what can we apply?
Yeah.
And drawing a picture of the Prophet Muhammad or desecrating a Quran is then things that you have to answer.
Yeah.
Do we permit that or not? Should we actually ban that in this case because of the fact that it would then ease
Mm.
relations along. And obviously we're not likely to want to approve some of the more extreme
No.
recommendations, but I think
Yeah.
there's not been that conversation, and therefore we're just kind of hoping it'll work its way out, and it doesn't work its way
Yeah.
out. And
I agree.
there isn't a simple answer, and so that will continue to be the case until we actually do that. And that's why you can get the de facto blasphemy, and you saw that with the Charlie Hebdo stuff as well.
Yeah. And
Um,
the teacher in somewhere in Yorkshire, Batley, wasn't it? I think
yes,
he's still in hiding.
yes,
2 years
yes,
still in hiding.
yes, yeah, and it goes back to others like Salman Rushdie.
Yeah.
So that's, I think, what's missing on this issue.
Mm.
I don't think it's a simple answer. I imagine the accommodation would be somewhere in the middle.
Mm.
It would have to be because these religions are not going to change that quickly.
Yeah.
Uh,
Right. You're
and
right.
and
Yeah.
the only alternative is just kind of expecting it to work itself out, but in a practice you end up with parallel systems for different people,
Yeah. Which we can't
which isn't
have.
workable, isn't very fair, and
Yeah.
we'll always have these conflicts.
Yeah. I
Um,
think we're seeing two two competing forces, and I don't mean like liberal
mm,
secular society and a religion. I think
yeah.
within that religion specifically, and I'm because
Mm,
I like everyone else, I've like friends with people of the Islamic faith. I've
mm,
worked with people who follow the Islamic faith, and they are 99% have the same
mm,
thoughts, wants that we have.
yeah.
Food on the table, money coming into the bank, holidays every year,
Mm,
kids to go to good school, security on the
yeah.
streets, all that type of stuff. And there's that small bit where maybe we disagree.
Mm,
But in my own personal experience, because I spend mainly my time with people that my age, so I'm 42 now,
mm,
42 and younger, who follow that faith.
mm,
Um, every single, and there hasn't been dozens, but there's
yeah.
been single figures, but every single one of them drinks, smokes,
Mm.
pays lip service to a degree, but
Yes.
at their heart, they would still consider themselves a follower.
Yes.
So I always said, where the hope from somebody like me, a atheist slash agnostic in a liberal secular
Mm,
society, is that the freedoms that that society offer
mm,
you and bring you will soften the edges, just like it did with
yes.
Catholicism and all the rest of it,
Yeah.
and Christianity. It softens the edges of what can be a very straight,
Yeah.
way of seeing the world, and that's what I
Mm,
think I'm hoping will happen. I'm
mm,
hoping more and more
mm,
liberalized followers start to go, actually, we just need to chill out about a lot of
yeah.
this stuff. I think though the competing pit to that is there is a reactionary
Mm,
element as well, and unfortunately, the reactionary element do have a lot of followers. We saw
yeah.
that with Batley, we saw it with
Mm,
this most recent example as well. But again, I don't know how you combat that. I genuinely don't. I think you have to do it through the law. I think you have to literally just clamp down on people like those sent to death
well,
threats. Now, I understand the book is holy to you, but it's not holy
I
to
think
him.
I think it's a combination. So yes, that there's legal remedy, but there's also having the right conversation
Mm,
between the politicians, also with the media,
mm,
opening up this discussion, um, and actually saying to people, it cannot be at the extremes. We have to come to some kind of accommodation here. So
mm,
what is that going to be?
mm,
Um, and I think more dialogue on the issues. Because what you tend to get presented as a dialogue on the issues in the media, and in the mainstream media anyway, is they get two people who hate each other, and then I speak about how awful you are, and then you speak about how awful I am, and I speak about how, and then the person in the middle tries to stop us shouting. That's not a debate. That's not a dialogue. That's just repeating positions, shouting positions at each other. So what we would actually want to do is have, and I think we're missing the, again, long-form debates as a mainstream staple where people actually delve into these issues and say, okay, well, that's what you're saying, but if we follow that through, it would mean this and this and this, and what about this example? How could we do that?
Challenging hypotheticals,
and then and then what does that? How does that leave me? And actually being able, because behind all these extreme, a small number of extreme people that is the people who will get onto the television. You've got a lot of moderate people who would actually be open to having that conversation, and we just need to tempt more of them to actually be involved. And I think it's important. One of the things the media could do is stop bringing on small special interest groups as if they are the voice of everybody in that community, as if they speak for all those people, as if they have the authority and expertise, because they often don't. Most of them aren't elected. So, and you see this across all sorts of issues, so if you see, if you get, going back to the trans issue, you get trans activists who have not been appointed by the trans community. They might, they will say they're speaking on behalf of them. They're actually speaking on behalf of a small group of people they know and their friends. There is. I mean, what is the trans community? And they haven't been polled, and who's elected? They're often self-appointed. So, I think you need to seek out those people who have the ability to listen and have a more moderate dialogue on whatever the issue is, and engage them in a different way in the media. And that's the way in which we can actually find a solution. I'm more interested in the solutions, I think.
I agree. 100% agree with you. I said this the other day when I got involved in that discussion about this foolish academic who made a very stupid comment about Harry Potter. And I posted it, and it started a bit of a debate, and most people, as I said, saw my point of view. A few people kind of attacked me and that, and I was asked to define what woke means, and I gave a definition. And she goes, but you can apply that, Jamie, to people on the other side. And I said, yes, you're getting it. I said, this is what we call woke, is the progressive, flawed thinking that we're talking about. The right-hand side, you can call it Trumpism, whatever you want to call it. There's Bolsonaroism, where the denial of reality about certain things using the same flawed thinking. And I said, though, this is what, and again, like you, I raised the media point of view. I said that the issue that we've got is our media now lives in their own echo chambers, and none of them are committed to nuance or truth. They're just not. They are all about partisanship and selling newspapers.
Well, it's incentives. So, clicks and viewership. It's all about clickbait and exaggeration and extreme. So we need to change the incentives to get a proper dialogue and debate.
And what unifies us as well, like what we have in common, because we do forget that. And it's amazing how you got. And again, I look at America, and this is where I worry it's going to come over here. But when you look at America, and we won't go into it on this one because we've been talking for quite a while now, but the idea of a national divorce, which was floated by that idiot Marjorie Taylor Greene. But honestly, when I jump, you can look at any issue, small or large, climate change, drag queens, whatever it is. And it's not about evidence, reason-based takes anymore. It's my side says this, my side says that, and I'm just going to go like that. That's what they do, and it's killing social cohesion, killing it.
I mean, there is a new possibility with technology, which we haven't got time to go into. But the idea being that you can have people can choose what side they're on and have it apply to their lives. The example being Brexit. You could have had people who left and people who didn't, and you would be taxed differently. If the technology is in place, you're taxed differently. You pay different amounts for your goods and services. Money is spent, down to the individual level. Money is spent for the budgets for those. And then you'd actually be able to say, well, I can actually choose to be in the EU, or I can choose to leave.
That would have been a dream.
And then you'd find out which is actually better.
You know what? That would be a dream.
Or maybe you find out it depends on who you are and what you do. And where you
I was having some of my Brexit rants when I was in Spain. Like, I could live here, but now I can't.
But
thanks,
that's
guys.
kind of the idea that if you took it to the extreme, you could have different laws applying to different people if there are different groups.
Yeah,
And then,
or the
you know,
missed
like
the trick.
if you'd been on the group that hadn't funded the police, they wouldn't come. But if you'd been on the other side, they would.
Can you imagine?
Yeah,
Can you imagine?
But it would be a logical development.
Yeah. I like that. It's a
And
very
that's
interesting
a possible future alternative to having to compromise or pick a camp.
I've never thought that. We should do a podcast on that next time. That's a fantastic topic.
Okay.
Because we could run scenarios of what that would look like. I like that.
Yeah.
That's good. Yeah,
Okay.
that is good. There we are.
Cool. Right.
Brilliant.
I think we're done for today.
I think
That's
that,
good
considering we said we'd probably make this a short one, we got into it, didn't we? Which is good.
Yeah.
Which is good.
All right.
Yeah.
See you soon.
Lovely. Yeah, good talking to you, Tom. Take care. Bye.